Hello everyone. So today we're going to be talking about Dune Part 2, which I was very lucky to see yesterday on Sunday, February 25th, about a week before the film's actual release. Now I'm going to be talking about the basic plot of the film. I'm going to try my best not to give anything away, but if you would like to go into this film completely blind, please leave the review and come back after you've seen it. I'm also going to try my best not to spoil the events of part one, which is going to be very, very hard when I try to explain the basic plot of this one since it relies so heavily on what came before, but I will do my best. So basically, this film follows the events of Dune Part 1. Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, must join the Fremen in order to help them fight in their war against the oppressive House Harkonnen. And that is about all I can say without spoiling the rest of this film and also the rest of Part 1. For the question of do you need to see part one before this, the answer is 100% yes. You 100% need to see part one. I don't have anyone, I didn't see this movie with anyone who hasn't seen part one before, so I don't know if someone who just goes into this one blind can keep up. They do share a lot of the events that happened in part one in this one, but they're not made explicitly clear. It's always much better to see these events flowed out than just have a character explain what happened to you. And you should absolutely see part one before this anyway, because it is just such an amazing piece of sci-fi cinema. And I can say the exact same thing about this one. This is an absolutely incredible film that I think personally, I don't know if this is just recency bias, but I do think that this film does manage to top the first one. This film is once again directed by Denis Villeneuve, who is one of my inspirations in getting into film. I mentioned before that Blade Runner 2049 was one of those movies that made me want to become a filmmaker. And I can see Dune and Dune Part 2. I was watching this film and I was just like, this is going to inspire a new generation of filmmakers that want to do something like this, that want to tell stories like this in this manner. And I felt so much hope for the filmmaking as a whole as I was watching this. But I think one of the things that really draws me to his work is that he is a very, very empathetic storyteller. He wants you to empathize with his characters, even the ones that are not even the antagonists in his films, not just our heroes. There's a moment really early in this film where you are put in the perspective of one of our antagonists, and you are supposed to empathize with him and the stress that he's under, and how even he is oppressed by the other antagonists in this film. And what that does is it both humanizes this otherwise just completely monstrous evil character, and also makes the House Harkonnen and that whole family just that much more intimidating. You do get the sense that they are much more ruthless, and in that one moment, it acts perfectly in contrast to the way House Atreides was played in part one. By far, the heart of the film and the people that Villeneuve wants you to empathize and sympathize with the most is the Fremen. You spend a lot more time with them in this film. Like, they are in this for pretty much the entire runtime of this movie. And you get to see how they view Paul Atreides, who has now just joined them. And in many ways, they act as the audience surrogate. They're asking the same questions that a lot of the audience members have been asking about this story. There's a lot that are asking, is this really going to be a white savior's story? Is he really going to lead us to greatness? And then there's also another group of Fremen that are kind of just blindly accepting him as the one. One of the Fremen that really believe that Paul is the one is Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem, who carries this warm fatherly presence to the film, and he provides a lot of comic relief. And he's just absolutely, he's just a joy to watch on screen. He gives a lot of life and personality to this dark and gloomy world. But by far, the true heart of the film is Chani, played by Zendaya, who is, heavily featured in the marketing in the first one, but, isn't really in that one all that much. Here, she plays a very, very big role. She is by far the emotional core of the film, and most of this movie is really dedicated to her relationship with Paul and how that expands throughout the runtime. I was shocked by how moved I was by this character. I teared up twice while watching this film, and both times were related to that character and what she was feeling. It's really hard for me to explain exactly why without going into to spoilers. So I'm just gonna say there is a lot that this character has to do emotionally, and Zendaya pulls it off very well. But of course, Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, is great. I believe Timothy is one of our one of our great modern day actors, and there's just so many layers to this performance. There is a performance shift halfway through the film, and it changes the way he appears throughout the rest of this film, and also the way that I view him from the start of both. Even back in part one, it adds more nuances and layers to that character. There he is very he's a very cold, shut off character, and without going to spoilers, there is kind of a darker layer to this character that you really get to see unfold in this part, and he becomes kind of terrifying by the end of this. He has this look in his eyes, even though he's like, you can tell that he's like playing a young guy. I think Paul is supposed to be like 16 in this story, but you could just he has eyes that can just pierce into your soul, and it says so much about his character. Every time that he's on screen, you can just watch his eyes and just know exactly what he's feeling. It's an incredible performance. And of course, in contrast to Paul, you have the main, I don't know if he's the main antagonist of this story, but you do have a probably the biggest biggest villain, main antagonist, I guess. If this film has one, I guess it could be him, although there is another character that comes to mind. But the Muscle, there we go. I'm going to call him the Muscle. The Muscle, played by Austin Butler, is not his name. His character's name is Fade Routha. But if you want a idea of what this character is supposed to be, think of a muscle, like the guy that our hero is supposed to fight, the big challenge. He is the Darth Vader to the Emperor. That's what Austin Butler is. He's very aggressive. He plays his part very aggressively, and he isn't in the film a whole lot. He is only given a small handful of scenes, but he really makes his presence known in his short screen time. Like in his first appearance, it immediately establishes, okay, this is a terrifying dude, and you do not want to be anywhere near him. They make him extremely uncomfortable to watch from the get-go. And one of the ways they do that is I don't know how else to describe this. He seems to get some sort of sexual pleasure through violence. The way that he's entranced by death and blood and all of this is just super uncomfortable, and it works so well to making him just a terrifying presence, and just wanting you to you want to run. You just want to crawl out of your skin whenever he's on screen. You really do get uncomfortable watching this character. And I think that does, it's really well done. It's really what Austin Butler has brought to this character. He just transforms himself completely into this terrifying figure. This film, in a lot of ways, is a revenge film. I feel like it shares a lot of tropes and ideas and themes with that genre. And it is, like most sequels of this manner of a blockbuster, it is a lot bigger. It's a lot more aggressive. And I think in many ways it's much more accessible for a general audience. Part one was a very slow-paced sci-fi drama. You didn't get a lot of action until the back half. And even then, the action scenes were short and quick. But a lot of it was dedicated towards world building and showing you Arrakis and showing you the politics of the world and all of this. This film, however, has a much faster pace. This film is almost 3 hours long. I think it's 2 hour 46 minutes, I think is around there. And it honestly just flew by. And I could have honestly watched another 3 hours worth. I was just locked in. That being said, it still does all of the world building stuff, and it still works to immerse you into this world, and it takes its time to show you, more of the Fremen culture and how that will relate to Paul's journey, both in this film and later on. And I mentioned that it is a bigger, more fast-paced movie, and of course, obviously that means that there is more action to this, and it is more violent. And these action scenes range from being these big, epic battles to just quick, small life or death interactions between two, but it always just feels big. It always feels a life or death. I remember watching the last fight of this movie, um, without getting into specifics, there the intensity is just so high. I saw this in a packed theater. Like every seat was pretty much sold out, and you could hear a pin drop. It, you know how crazy it is to go to a movie theater in 2024 and not have a single person talk. You kind of have to earn that as a filmmaker, and you know, the action scenes are just so you just get invested in them because you care about these characters. We care about Paul's journey. We care about, his relation to the Fremen. We want to see how this will all play out. And even the way that this last battle is filmed, it just really heightens your intensity. It feels close, it feels intimate. It's just so well done, and I want to say more. You can tell that I'm trying to hold myself back because there's so much that I want to say about it, but I can't because I want you guys to go see it for yourself and have the same experience that I did. And of course, speaking of seeing things for yourself just like I did, the effects in this film, they somehow look more impressive than they did in part one, which I did not think was possible. I don't think I've seen a movie look this good from a visual effects standpoint since Dune Part 1. It's just jaw-dropping stuff. You just look at it and it looks real. It just looks real. It's not real, but it looks real. I have no idea how they did half the stuff they did in Part 1. I don't know how they did any of the stuff they did in Part 2. I don't want to know either. I don't want it to be ruined for me. You could say it's CGI. It's CGI. You could say it's practical effects. I believe you. It blends in so well with this environment, and I don't know how Denis, every single one of his films since like Blade Runner, has always had all of these massive visual effects in them, and they always just blend so seamlessly into this world. He just kind of has an eye for this, and whoever his visual effects team is, hats off to them. Hats off to them, because they did the impossible. Of course, given that this is a review of a film that I'm doing on my channel, I probably they are. This entire thing is, it's a bigger movie, and it was filmed entirely in 1:90 IMAX aspect ratio, as opposed to just having select scenes like the first one did. Of course, it can expand even more if you see it in a bigger theater, but I did not have that opportunity, and the effect of the cinematography by Greg Fraser is still there. I do think that this deserves to be seen on the biggest screen possible, just for a sense of scale, really. Not just because it's visually stunning, but you really get the sense that we are on the ground with the Fremen in a lot of ways. You really get to see how oppressive the Harkonnens are. You have these big ships that just kind of tower over our characters, or they're trying to hide under like this big contraption so they can try and shoot down a dragonfly helicopter. I don't know how else to describe them. That's like trying to take them out. It really helps to immerse you into that world and pull you into the world that our characters inhabit. The score by Hans Zimmer, once again, is just another absolute highlight. It really helps to sell the true emotion of a scene, and in a lot of ways it acts in contrast to what's actually happening in front of us visually. Characters could be cheering about something, but the score will be completely, dour and kind of sinister, and that just tells us the story, for us, just emotionally. What are we supposed to feel? What are we like actually? What does this moment actually mean? And of course, I said in my review for part one that the themes are the most interesting part of the Dune story, and that is 100% true for part two as well. It asks a lot of the same questions as it did in part one, these ideas of colonialism and oppression, and also, it challenges the white savior trope. But in this one, it also asks us to question the nature of violence and revenge, and how it is this vicious cycle that will only continue the more you go down that path. And while there is a lot of big action scenes in here, they are big and grandiose, there is also this layer of sadness to it, because it also showcases the horrors of revenge and the horrors of war, what that could lead to and how destructive all of that is. It does all of this to really cement this idea that there is no white savior in this story. And in doing so, it sets itself apart from other films and stories like it for that reason. It just rejects that idea. It's clear that there is more story to tell after the credits roll. But at the same time, everyone has an arc. The characters all go through an emotional journey that kind of starts and ends by the time the credits roll. The ending of this story, it's devastating. It takes the emotions of the story's ending and just completely runs with it. I know this is supposed to adapt the second half of the first book in the Dune saga. I have not read these books. What I do know is that Frank Herbert kind of wasn't too thrilled about the way that Paul Atreides was viewed following his book's release. And I know that one of Villeneuve's goals when making these films was to sort of correct Paul Atreides' reputation in the public, in pop culture. And I think with the ending of part 2, he really, really does that. Without going into specifics, Villeneuve is a empathetic storyteller, and I think that is best shown in the film's last few moments. And I'm not going to say any more about that quite yet. But there is a lot more that I have to say about this film. I absolutely loved it. I don't have plans to see it again, but I plan to see it again when the film has a official wide release. And when I do see it again, I will probably do a spoiler-esque review because there's a lot in here that I have not gotten to talk about, especially related to the film's themes, which I wish I could have talked about more, but I also don't want to give anything away. But yeah, I did absolutely love this film, and if you are at all interested, check it out. I think it's worth a watch, especially on the biggest screen that you can find. But yeah, that's going to be it for my review of Dune Part 2. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.